Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining today. This is your host, Nino, and that is my XP computer that you met from the previous video. However, today's video is not about Windows XP, but as several of you suggested, I am going to give here now Linux a spin. And for the purpose, I have chosen a distribution called Linux Lite. Now, before anyone's heart breaks, no XP systems have been harmed in the endeavor. Instead, I installed Linux Lite on such a platter disk from Anno Domini 2013. Luckily, IT parts have become cheap. I mean, do you remember Mission Impossible 1 when in the end Ethan was paying Luther with computer chips of some weird architecture which nowadays certainly is found only in exceptional cases? Well, that wouldn't quite live up to the times nowadays. So, given that things are easily obtained, Windows XP is safe asleep, and I installed Linux to see how it will measure up here. And how did I install it? By way of a DVD. You can see here the section that has been burned as opposed to the not yet burnt one. I had totally forgotten how to do that. I mean, there was this topic of finalizing the DVD, if you remember, and things like that. And the burning speed and not jittering around it. And this DVD itself is certainly also some decade old. So that was an adventure. And it took about 3 hours to install, although it is a sort of lighter distribution. The reason I attribute this to is that the disk contains about 2.5 gigabyte as an image, whereas on the disk it all ends up in around 15 gigabyte. And there we are already being welcomed. So Linux Lite is a derivative of Ubuntu, and here specifically of the latest long-term version, which is what really attracted me to it. It is running XFCE, and its official system requirements regarding RAM are 768 megabyte. So not too low, not lower than half a gigabyte, but also not more than 1 gigabyte. And given that my machine has 2 gigabyte, I thought that's certainly a good match. I'm also running here an AMD Athlon 64 3000 Plus processor, first introduced in the year of the Lord 2003. So this is a 20-year-old processor model running on an about 15-year-old computer with, for the time, very respectable 2 gigabyte of RAM. And this is some sort of welcome screen. I could turn it off to not show it on startup, but I don't mind. And you saw it just booting and how long it took. And I'm now going to quickly go through this Linux distribution and mention some of its advantages, as well as certain significant, unfortunately, disadvantages I came across. So first of all, as I said, this is an Ubuntu derivative and therefore should have access to Ubuntu's software repository. And that is a big consideration when you're picking a light Linux. One should not go for as light as possible. This was a mistake I was making initially too. But what then happens is you end up with software you do not really like that is being pre-installed. I'm just saying here, do you really want to use Dillo as your main everyday browser? And then you try to install things separately, so your once lean distribution becomes not all that lean anymore. And as you do so, you might also run into the question of where do you even obtain packages from. So picking something which is a cousin of a big distribution eases your life a lot in that respect. And there seem to be multiple options regarding Ubuntu nowadays. So there's Linux Lite, but there is certainly also what is it called? Puppy Linux, specifically the Pup variant, which is not featured in its main website. That's only shown something called Fossa Pup, but that was like the last before the newest long-term version, so it's not supported very long anymore, and they didn't want to go for it. So you're having Pub there, but you're having also other interesting distributions such as Absolute Linux, which would have even more modest software requirements. However, based on Slackware. So that would have been really the other option for that one. This one, however, came with the Build Essential package pre-installed, which are Ubuntu's development tools. And I found that interesting, of course. So if I show you which GCC, we do have GCC on board. That was a good thing. We also have Python. Oopsie daisy. It was Python 3.10 point something, but now it is 3.10.12. It has updated it. Yeah, meanwhile I updated the system. Didn't change who knows how much, but yeah, that's a thing I got. It also featured software that people are sort of used to also from Windows, like not too strange stuff, so to say. And there, let's go quickly through the menus, what you mainly have. As graphics, you're having a document scanner, great. You're having GIMP, which is like this Photoshop-like thingy, that's cute. A paint program, a most important accessoire for any computer to have, and a photo manager. Internet, you're having here most importantly Chrome and Thunderbird. Opera is something which I put on the machine because I prefer Opera to Chrome. Still, you see, interesting choice for miniature Linux, giving you a decent web browser. You shouldn't be saving on the web browser, unfortunately. The modern web has become complex, and the web browser is your single point where you cannot contract your deployment. Like, you cannot go for some cheap, light-footed, nimble little thingy because it will not open a lot of websites properly. You need one of the main browsers, unfortunately, and this comes with Chrome, which of course is an older version, but that is always the fate when you get something on DVD. Regarding multimedia, you're having VLC, which I really respected. And I mean, the CD DVD burner, I shall just remind you, sometimes these things are more useful than we would like to admit. And regarding Office, you're having LibreOffice. So it's not this cobbled together combination of multiple programs where you may not be used to, but it is an Office suite which is very well known also in the Windows world. So for anybody switching or trying out Linux, that would be not a bad choice. You know, oftentimes people who try out such lighter distributions on older machines are people who have been having an older Windows system there, which cannot be reasonably updated any longer, yet the computer is still working well enough, and they are searching for another operating system. Then they end up with Linux, and you don't want something which looks oh so completely different. Like, aesthetic differences, fine, but you want it to substantially work what you're used to, and that in the main points I would say satisfies. Now, I was playing a little thought game. What happens if you are installing this indeed on some desktop machine in some remote location? I'm certainly having that use case, not with this computer, but one at a holiday house. In the past, there were Linux distributions sold on DVDs, whereby these DVDs were DVD sets with the packages. But who is using DVDs nowadays? And therefore, such things have become impossible to obtain. I had them for Debian, I had them for Ubuntu, I had that for FreeBSD and NetBSD, even Dragonfly BSD. So that is a bit of a pity, because in such a situation, when you don't have internet or slow internet or unreliable internet, you're better off having something which you can install on the spot or take with you. And that's what I did here. I wanted to have another browser, so I did get Opera, which I just simply installed, and I got a Firefox archive, which also just unbuttoned in a folder and just running from there. And if I started from here, I think, then it should just, oh no, it was this one, I believe. Yeah, that's Firefox bin. Yes, Firefox bin, I mean. So there it goes. I have started now, pressed enter a bit too often. Got multiple Firefoxes. Can close some of them. Open up an amazing blah, 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 blah. So there I have a browser. I mean, I could also show you the default Chrome, which would be a more fair review because all of you know Firefox, of course. The advice here is not to install Firefox through the apt system because unfortunately you're going to get then snapd on your system. Like Linux Lite is apparently delivered without snap, but if you insist on the Ubuntu Firefox package, you do get snap. So, where was I? Yeah. There goes Google Chrome. That's strange that I have to wait for so long. Is it because I have Firefox open? So that was the one thing I got. And let's browse around a little bit. Let's go to CNN.com. Haven't been there. Was on the BBC. The problem is if I go to the BBC here again, then it will just profit from its caching and it will not show you the true speed. It will be faster than it really is. So this is how fast you can surf on a 15-year-old machine with a 20-year-old processor model. And yes, I accept all because certainly I will not be using this browser all that much. So let's see some Thai story. Something about Thailand, or maybe the Ukraine offensive. Great. Really, when one reads the news, one just doesn't want to read the news. Okay, let's try something like that. Yeah, I did click it. I expected to do. It is apparently already changing towards the website, and that's as fast as it is. So you see, that's not fast, right? However, it is really Europe is in the extra menu, thanks. But it is fast enough. Like if you're in a pinch, then that is what you could be using. I'm not sure how that would really look like if I didn't have my 2 GB RAM. In fact, with 2 GB RAM, you do not have to resort to quite so minimalistic projects. You can resort to pretty normal ones. So you saw here how Chromium is faring. Let's try Firefox on the BBC here, because Firefox did not cache that. bbc.com. To compare it also with Windows XP, which we used to visit the BBC, right? Speed is about the same. So there you're having the world's largest landlocked country. And there you have an article about Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan, greatest country in the world. All other countries are ruled by little girls. Maybe later. So now you have an impression about the browsing speed, and that is perhaps the most important feature of any modern computer to be useful, to be able to access the internet. So browser-wise, I got Opera and Firefox, so that was nice. And Lisp-wise, of course, I can install through Ubuntu's apt-get system all sorts of Lisps, but instead of that, I went for closure common Lisp. And this is a distribution which you can download in a folder. And thereby, you do not need to install anything in your system and can just use it this way. So yeah, there you have Lisp. So I have Lisp, I have browsers, and yes, I have my Office suite. We can give the Office suite a spin too, like why not? Let's see how quickly or how slowly will it be to launch Word. LibreOffice Writer, that is. Did they call it Word? How did I see this? Word processor, okay. Okay, cool. So let's see how fast our word processor will start. Yeah, it takes a few seconds, right? I mean, this thing has less disk space, less RAM. You can create fillable. Okay, thanks a lot. Show on startup. I don't want to get involved. No, nothing here. All right. So this is how long it takes to start a Word document. I can say hello, viewers. And we can make the whole thing really big and readable for you. So there you have it. Now, yeah, what I was starting to tell you. The machine has actually less RAM, less disk space, less speed, and less screen resolution than even a modest phone nowadays, right? The entire installation size is 15 gigabyte. We can see that here. So, 16 gigabyte now. Yes, I have a 500 gigabyte disk. So, okay, disk size is actually fine. In a couple of years, it will be less than your phone, but not quite yet. that was an absolutely science fiction-ish disk size at the time. Disks at the time were about just 1/10 that big, but fortunately they're not expensive nowadays. So we now actually have seen the good parts of Linux Lite, the way it is usable for browsing, for office work. We have seen its actually very tolerable speed. And now I will unfortunately also come to the parts which did not work well at all. And which is why I'm not sure that I can recommend this to a real novice. If you have someone install it for you on the oldest hardware, that might be nice. But trying it yourself might be more challenging than you would like to engage in. So first of all, looking at the internet connections, you're having here this option of edit connections. For instance, here for my wireless one, then you're having this little wheel, and when you open that, there is this like set of tabs, and when you press IP version 4 settings, you're getting this screen, and that's the screen which is of interest. See, yesterday when I was pinging 8888, it was pinging it, but if I were to ping www.google.at, it would do nothing. Because domain name resolution was not working. For whatever reason, I don't know why. And when I looked here, it was set to DHCP automatic. But I changed that to automatic only the addresses, only for the IP addresses, but the DNS I set manually. And since then, I actually have proper DNS resolution. So that was the one unpleasant element, which is also a little bit hard to track down unless you already have an idea what is going wrong. Because like you ping something, everything's working, you surf, nothing works. So then the second thing was less pleasant. That was namely concerning mousepad. That was concerning the sources. It could not update its package repository sources. And it's apt sources.pkg. list. So this is the file in which are written the places, let me zoom in closer, from where this Linux should be fetching packages as well as package updates. And it was having some other site here, some US site or something like that in some cases, and in others it was just directly with archive. You can see that these are the default Ubuntu sites, but for whatever reason I was just getting failures and it was refusing to resort to them and to use them for package update and installation. Instead, I inserted the following elements, just telling you in case you have this issue and in case you would like to try Linux Lite and not run around this issue here, these problems. First of all, I let it have the German websites. The German websites worked. And second of all, after the deb, I just wrote trusted is equal to yes in case some repository key wasn't working. Like something wasn't working, I don't even know which and how many, but not everything there was accessible, and I just slammed there trusted is equal to yes. So if you have these two elements, trusted is equal to yes and the German website, then you can update most of the packages. Most, oh yes, because two still didn't want to, and I'm going to show them to you here so that you see better. CD desktop, and let's do the desktop. So the Lite software and the Lite sources debs, which were available from the Linux Lite website, were not possible to be updated through apt for me. I don't know exactly why. Maybe something else has been going wrong elsewhere, but given that in general I can browse, I was very skeptic about it and unhappy that I had to chase them manually. That fortunately turned out to be pretty easy though. If I now go to the bookmarks, yeah, right. So that's what I did. I went simply to the site repo.linuxlite/full/main/l/lite sources, and there I just manually picked the one package, so that was for the sources. It is shown to you as an updatable package, but then it doesn't manage to update it. And then I went there for the software and did the same story here. So that's where I got my deb files from. I installed them, and now apt seems to be working, but it is one of those adventures which you do not want to have if you just want to very quickly put Linux on an old machine. I mean, if the machine is isolated, as I mentioned in the beginning, if it is really in a remote place, you might not even care all that much about that fuss. But if you do want to make use of one of the main advantages of having a Ubuntu cousin, that is Ubuntu's repositories, then you will have to go through that. And for that reason, I must say, performance-wise, Linux Lite so far does not disappoint. Software choice-wise, it is a nice selection. However, regarding these hiccups with the DNS and the packages collection, I must really say that should be handled better. Nonetheless, the machine performs extremely nicely, better, I would say, feeling-wise, than it did under XP. And certainly it is a possible system to have, at least in reserve, if one wants to make use of such old hardware. And with that, the review of Linux Lite is herewith over. Thank you very much for having joined today. I hope to greet you here sometime soon again. Until then, have a wonderful time, and from me, goodbye.